Hello and welcome to another SunVox tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you how to use the very basics of SunVox. So let's get started. First I'm going to show you the interface. So here's what SunVox looks like when you open it up. There might be some minor theme differences, minor differences in the color depending on which theme you chose. But here's what it looks like. Now, if this looks a little bit complicated, it's okay because I'm going to break it down in this tutorial. So SunVox has three main sections to it. And the first one is the pattern editor. This is in the top left corner of SunVox. And this is where we can edit our patterns and add notes into them to create music. The pattern editor in SunVox uses what is called a tracker system. I will show you how to use that later in this tutorial. Next, we have the module view. This is in the center of SunVox. This is where we can create, edit, and delete our modules. Modules are basically just instruments. And last, at the bottom, we have the timeline. This is where we can create, clone, edit, or delete our patterns, and we can move them around and adjust them to where we want them to be in the song. Alright, now that I've shown you the SunVox interface, let's jump right into SunVox. Alright, now that we are in SunVox, I want to show you just a couple little things about the SunVox interface before we start. So the first thing is up in the top left corner we have this little button. You can click it. And this will bring up the SunVox main menu. And it will have some basic options such as new project, load project, save, export. We also have project properties. Let's go ahead and click on that. And this will bring up little options here that we have. We have BPM, which is how fast our song will play. We have ticks per line, or TPL, and time grid. Now, I will explain these in a later tutorial. For now, all you really need to know is the BPM, and you can click and drag to change it. For now, I'll just leave it at 125. You can use these little arrows over here to do fine adjustments. Let's go ahead and close out of it, and I'll show you one more thing. Okay, so over here we have some buttons. We have the record button, and we have a play from the beginning button. We have a play button for only playing just the pattern, and then a stop button. Now also right here we have some buttons for zooming in and out on the module view, and I will explain these buttons a little later. Also over here we have the mouse keyboard. And if you go ahead and click on one of these modules, say keys 1, we can click on this piano roll to make some sound. Alright, now that we have some of those things explained, let's go ahead and click on the main menu, and let's click New Project. Let's go ahead and click on Empty. And that will get rid of all those template instruments. So now is a great opportunity to explain how modules or instruments work in SunVox. So right here we have our module view, and we have one module. This is the output module. Now, let's go ahead and create a module. To do that, we can either double click and it will bring up this menu, or we can right click and click new, or we can click up here on this little 3 bars right there and click new. And this will bring up a whole bunch of options for modules. For now, we're going to just create one module, and that is going to be the generator module. So go ahead and click on that. It's underneath synths, and click generator and then click OK. Now, as you can see, we have created a generator. And a generator is just a simple, it's a very basic synth that you can change and modify to get the sound you want. Now, I will explain how to use a generator more in depth, how to change these options to get the sound you want in a later tutorial. For now, we're just going to use it as it is, so we're going to leave these parameters alone. Now, we have this generator selected, as you can see by these little glowing corners, and we can press on the piano roll, but it's not going to make any sound, and the reason is because for anything to make sound in SunVox, any module, it has to be linked to the output in some way. And this is called routing. Now this is where some of the geniusness of SunVox comes in. This is my favorite thing about SunVox. What we need to do to get sound out of this generator is route it to the output, and there's several ways to do that. We can hold shift and click and drag to the output like this and let off. And as you can see, we now have a line that connects to the output, and we have these little dots running towards the output. And that means that our sound is going into the output. And now, as you can see, we'll make a little beeping sound when we use it on the piano roll. Alright, so there's a couple things I need to explain about routing. To unroute a module, we do the same thing. We hold shift, click and drag, and let go, and it will unroute it. Now when you route, you have to make sure that you route the correct direction. You cannot route the output to the generator and expect sound to come out of it. It has to be routed into the output, the correct direction. So there's a couple ways to route things. And my favorite way is just to use shift, click, and drag. But you can also click on the generator and click this routing button up here. And as you can see, it will go all green and it will say select destination up in the corner. And we can select the output. So there's an alternative way to route. I prefer just to use shift and click. Alright, so I've explained the routing system and the modules. Now, one thing I would like to show you before we go on to the pattern editor is the fact that when you download SunVox, these modules in here, these are the basic modules, but you can go ahead and double click to create a new module and click load. This is where we can load other samples, alright? So go ahead and when you're in load, click on the home button, and this should bring you to your SunVox folder. Click on the 2 dots twice, and there should be an instruments folder. Click on that, and you should have some of the folders that I have here. I have some others that I've downloaded later on. But, as you can see, there's these folders, and they all have some just kind of default sounds that came with SunVox. So we can go in here, we can go into the piano folder, and we can select a piano, and we can click preview, make sure preview is highlighted green, and we can see what it sounds like. Alright, so that doesn't really sound very good, so let's click on this one. Alright, that sounds pretty good. So once we find the one we want, we can press OK. And look here, we have an ambient piano. And we can go ahead and remember to hold shift and click and drag, route it towards the output. And now we have a piano. So I just wanted to show you that there are some default samples that come with SunVox that are pretty good. And I would suggest using them and finding the ones you like for your first song. But obviously, you can't write a song if you don't know how to use the rest of SunVox. So, I'm going to show you how to put some notes into a pattern to create music. Alright, so let's go up here and let's do some explaining. So, SunVox uses what's called a tracker. And this is just some lines that go from top to bottom that we can add notes into. Now, when we press the play button, as you can see, this sort of line here, which shows where we are in the song, is going from left to right on the timeline through the pattern. But on the pattern editor here, as you can see, there's this little yellow line. It's actually going from top to bottom. So that is the direction of the notes. So how do we add notes into the pattern? Well, first we need to go into edit mode. And there's two ways to do that. You can either click this little lock button up here, and some options will come up. And as you can see, now we have a little cursor sort of thing underneath where we have selected. And we can use our scroll wheel or the arrow keys, or we can click to move around the pattern. Now when we're in edit mode, when we click a note on the piano roll, it will add that note into the pattern. Make sure that you are on NN, which is the very left of this line. Make sure that you are all the way to the left, like this, or else you won't be able to add notes, because these other places are for different things. As you can see, we have parameter, effect, controller, module, and the module, which is automatically added because we have this selected, just adds itself in when we add notes. And then we have velocity, and then notes. So let's just stay on notes. As you can see, we've added an A5 into this pattern. So now we can move up and down. Let's go down and add a B. So I've added some notes, 4 lines apart, and now these notes are added into the pattern. So let's go ahead and click the play button and see what it sounds like. Well, let's click this play button so it starts from the beginning of the song. As you can see, it's playing this pattern. It's also repeating it because we don't have any more patterns to play, so it's just going to repeat over and over again. Now, that is how we add notes into our pattern. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the timeline, and this is where we can edit and move around our patterns in our song. So, in the timeline, right now we have this first pattern selected, and we can do a couple things. So if we want to create a new pattern, we can either double click, and now we've created a new pattern and also selected it. So that's why we don't see our old pattern anymore up here. You can click between them to select them. And we can click and drag and put this at the very end of our last pattern, so it goes from one to the other. And we can edit our pattern just like we have before, pressing space to make sure we're in edit mode. And as you can see, we have two separate patterns. For now, I'm going to delete this pattern, and the way I'm going to do that is right click and click delete. Or you can also select them and press the delete button and press yes. Or you can go here and click delete and then select the one you want to delete. Well, I did that backwards. You have to select it and then click there and click delete. But we don't want to delete this pattern, so let's click no. Now, you can also create patterns by clicking that little button there. And you can duplicate a pattern by doing Control-C and then Control-V. Now, in SunVox, there's two types of duplication. The one we just did creates an entirely new separate pattern. Now, this means that this pattern is the same as this pattern, but they are not related, which means when we change something in this pattern, it won't change anything in this pattern. But if we do the other duplication, select the pattern and do Control-D, this will duplicate this pattern. As you can see, you can keep doing it forward, but it won't be its own separate pattern. It will be connected. And what's so nice about this is when we edit something in this pattern, it will edit it for all of these patterns that are connected. So there's cloning patterns, which is doing Control-D, or right-clicking and clicking clone. We can go ahead and delete those. Or there is Control-C and then Control-V, which creates a pattern that is the same as this pattern, but they are not connected, which means you can change this one without changing this one. Alright, so I'm pretty sure that explains the timeline well enough. I'm going to end it by writing just a short little song. Alright, for this song, it's just going to be a simple piano song. So, let's go ahead and select this pattern. You know what? Let's go ahead and delete this pattern. I'll right-click and delete. Press yes. I'll double-click to make a new pattern. And I will set it in line with this line, this line right here. This line is where the song starts, this vertical line right here. That's a little bit brighter than all these other lines. So let's go ahead and put it right on with that line. And let's add some notes in here. Alright, so we want our melody to be a little bit longer than this pattern. And the way we do that is we double click on our pattern And this will bring up our pattern properties. Now you can bring this up also by right-clicking and clicking pattern properties. And this is where we can change the number of lines or how long our pattern is. And let's go ahead and change it to where it is 64 lines long. And there's some other things we can do in here. We can name the pattern. Looks like we don't quite have enough room to type melody, but we can name it. So let's type in high. And as you can see, it will show it on there. We can also click this no icon button to remove the randomly generated little design that's on them. If you listen closely, the strings keep playing this E for a little while. And the reason is because this module rather, is a module that has sustain, is what SunVox calls it. Which means that if we don't stop the note, manually, it will continue playing until we add a stop to it. Now, let's go ahead and add a stop to these because this is one thing that's pretty important to know about SunVox. We need to be able to know how to stop our notes. And I guess a better example of this would be to show you a pattern with a generator. A generator is also sustain. So let's go ahead and put A on here. Oh, we need to press space and go to edit mode. Alright. Okay, as you can see, it just keeps playing. So what if we want to stop this note? Well, the easy thing to do is to go into edit mode. And this little off button, let's find where we want to stop it. Let's stop it at this measure. And let's click the off button. And this will add a stop. And this right here, this green, which is representing the generator, it will play until it reaches the stop, and then it will stop playing. Alright, so there is another way to add a stop, and that is to use the tilde key. Now we have to make sure we're in edit mode, and the tilde key is to the left of the 1 key. And it's kind of that little squiggly line looking key. And if we press that, it will add a stop where our cursor is. Now, we don't really want this stop here now because we just added that one. So let's press the delete key and remove it. Alright, so let's go ahead and select this. And the way I'm selecting this is holding shift and dragging. And what we've done here is we've selected all these, and we can do Control D, and it will do that duplicating thing only with all of those. Next, let's select only these and do the same thing. And let's add one last thing. Now, what if we want to add a chord? Well, when you first create a pattern, there's actually 4 places that you can add a note into. And these are called the tracks. Now we can edit this in the pattern if we double click and see number of tracks is set to 4. Now we can add more if we want, but for now let's just keep it at 4. So let's close out of it. And to make our chord, we're going to put a C, and let's put a G on this next line here. See these lines separating them. These bright 2 dots will show you where you can add your notes. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. Okay, that's a pretty good ending. Let's listen to the song now. And there you go. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I will see you in the next one.